make me a means of your peace.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Catholics Today. We have a treat for you today. We are with our 4 newly ordained transitional deacons, seminarians for the Diocese of Lafayette. We are here with Deacon David Rosa, Deacon Matthew Hebert, Deacon Christopher Cambry, and Deacon Renee Pelletier. So, good morning, guys.
Good morning, Father.
Good to have you all. We have the opportunity to visit for a little bit of an extended period with the good people of Acadiana, get to know you guys a little bit better, how you have come to this point, maybe a little bit about your vocation, what seminary is like, and what you are looking forward to and actually already doing as deacons in our parish. And so maybe if we could begin with yourself, David, and moving this way, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and your home parish, maybe a little bit about your family and how it was that you received the gift of faith and began to pursue the priesthood.
Well, from Karen Grove, that's where my home parish is. However, my family's from Chaitanya, so I spent a lot of time over there, so I kind of claim Mount Carmel.
So for those who don't know where Chaitanya is, there might be a few people.
maybe a few people.
Is that around Berwick?
No, not around Berwick.
Oh, okay.
Lodwald. That's in between Eunice and Ville Platte.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and a little village over there.
Okay.
Yes. So, and then, but on the other side, down in Vermilion Parish, I also spent a lot of time over there between Kaplan and Gaydon, right next to St. David's Chapel.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So that's where my dad's crawfish ponds are. So I spent a lot of time going between those two areas. And my mom and dad and just my older brother, he's about 10 years older than me. He has a civil wife, and I have 2 nephews. I'm very excited about that because I get to teach them French. And as far as the faith, thank God I've seen it throughout my life. A couple of things I specifically remember are my grandparents going to Mass during the Holy Triduum. And I remember specifically thinking to myself, why are they going to Mass? Why are we going to Mass? It's not Sunday. But that stuck with me. And I reflected on that more and more, and now I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other thing was my granny, Annie Terrio, who told me about the medals. She had given me a little cross, maybe for my first communion or something. And she said, every time you feel it cold on you, you can remember to say a prayer. And I always wondered why. I said, man, that's weird. But now I understand. And that was all preparing me for that deeper relationship with God, which finally led me to pursue that deeper relationship, which led me to the priesthood.
Thanks. Great. Matthew?
Can you repeat the question?
Just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and your home parish, family. Where did you receive the gift of faith and how you began on this path to priesthood?
I grew up around Abbeville, Louisiana, in the Maurice, Leroy area. My home parish was St. Mary Magdalene. And even though it wasn't the closest church to our actual home, it was where both of my parents grew up. And so there was a continuation in our family. And so I grew up from, as far as I can remember, 3rd grade on, we're actually serving as an altar server. My brother also served with me, Jake. So I was in 3rd grade, he was in 4th grade. And I remember we would often critique each other on who did better. and
what was the result? I mean, who did do better?
It was clearly me.
Obviously,
okay.
Obviously, of course.
So
he's not on the stage, right?
He's not here, so I can say what I want. And it's true, it's on TV. So I think that was good for me just to start to establish a relationship with the altar, close to the altar, close to the priest that I was being influenced by as I grew up. And so, but even more than that, my family. I think that I received that gift of faith in my family. I can remember growing up and we would wake up early in the morning to pray the rosary as a family. And little things like that, and being here in South Louisiana with a strong culture of Catholicism, I think it was just easy for me to start to be able to relate to the faith as a young boy and eventually as a young man. So I give all my credit to where I grew up, to my family, and to some excellent priests that inspired me and helped me to see that I may have a call, and if I do, I need to answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, just a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and how you've come to be, at this point, a newly ordained transitional deacon.
Exciting times we live in. So I grew up in Lafayette. You know, people like to make the distinction Lafayette proper, and then I don't know what they call the other one, just Lafayette, I guess.
Improper.
Improper, maybe. So I grew up Lafayette improper.
I know that.
And my favorite part of Lafayette. So I grew up there. I was homeschooled up till high school. In high school, went to Turlings, and then my last year went to John Paul the Great Academy, and I graduated there, then went to seminary. Growing up, I had 7 brothers and sisters, 5 brothers, 1 sister, 7 of us, and grew up with a good Catholic family. So, you know, I was nurtured in the faith, which is always great and great blessing to have. Mm-hmm. And then I'm St. Pius X parish. I don't think I mentioned that. And so we were very involved in the parish. My dad made sure my brothers, we were all altar servers. We were a little reluctant at first because, you know, we were embarrassed to be up there on the altar. We thought we'd make mistakes, and we certainly did. But, you know, I grew to love it. And Monsignor Mouton, who's my parish priest most of the time, he made sure that we knew the liturgy. So anytime after Mass there was mistakes, he would, you know, address us and just say, like, all right, this is what you did wrong, this is what you need to do. And so we really took an interest in really getting to know the liturgy. Mm-hmm. And so at an early age, you know, I knew what epiclesis was, you know, which is rare nowadays. And so it was just a beautiful thing to learn the liturgy at an early age and kind of be familiar with it. And little did I know that I was slowly falling in love with it. Mm-hmm. And 2, Monsignor Mouton, he'd always like to point out that he thought I was going to be a priest one day. So that kind of stuck with me. And so throughout high school, kind of that thought was, you know, the back of my mind. And eventually it kind of came to fruition with learning more about my faith and getting to know more about God, my prayer life, and then the next thing you know, I'm in seminary, so, you know, bada bing, bada boom. That's how God works.
That's wonderful. So, Renee, do you know what epiclesis means?
You know? I kind of want to hear Chris's answer first. That's whenever the priest puts his hands over the chalice and the bread, calling down the Holy Spirit upon it, blessing it.
Very good.
Great job.
Did you learn that? Did you learn that in seminary, or as an altar server?
I unfortunately did. I didn't have Monsignor Mouton as my pastor.
So, right. And you still managed
somehow
to get to seminary.
A true act of God.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how you've come to be a deacon.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in Lafayette proper, not improper. Sorry. Yes, and. So I grew up there, and I went to public school my whole life. It was a really awesome experience. A lot of good people, a lot of people of the faith. Had a really strong community there. My parents, they encouraged us / made us go to Mass every Sunday, and they were very supportive of us practicing the faith. They were never they never let us, you know, skip or anything like that, and that really formed me to see that there was a priority there in Mass. And because of that, I was a lot more focused on growing in my faith throughout public school. You know, I didn't have any really well, maybe I didn't really have any strong religion classes. Certainly not in public school, of course. And so because of that, I took a lot of that formation on my own, and it really got me on fire for the faith. And that fire that I really discovered in high school came to fruition in college whenever I ultimately answered the call to enter seminary.
So I think a lot of people who are watching have some vague idea what seminary is. You know, everyone knows that you have to go to seminary before you become ordained, before you become a priest. But not a lot of people know what actually happens for that time period. And it's a long time period, right? I mean, it can be anywhere from 6 years to 8 years, and I believe in Christopher's case, 9 total years of seminary before he's all done and is ordained a priest next year. So I thought maybe we could spend a little bit of time explaining to our viewers what happens? We talk about formation, right? You become immersed in this process of becoming a priest, right? And so you are formed, right? And there are different aspects of that formation. The church documents call for the different, what we call the 4 pillars of formation: human formation, spiritual formation, intellectual formation, and pastoral formation. So I'd like to focus a little bit on each of those. Maybe you guys can speak to one of those and just give the viewers a little bit of a sense of, like, for instance, what is human formation, and why do we have human formation for seminarians?
Well, first, I like to call them dimensions, because pillars all of a sudden makes me feel as though they're separate.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go through formation, you of course learn the specific pillars, but then as I've gotten to be a deacon, and hopefully as I continue, I'll be able to see even more how they've come together.
Mm-hmm.
And that human formation is where we begin, of course. It's first we're human. And at St. Joseph's, so we're really focused on that. That's on the North Shore on Lake Pontchartrain. And just spending time together, being able to deal with your brothers who live down the halls, who may play really loud music, or brothers who never come out of their rooms, learning how to build relationships with them and have them as your brothers in faith, and just being able to live a human life, as well as making time to exercise, eat right, go hunting and fishing when it's time for that, and also staying back at school to rest, even though you want to go hunting and fishing, so that you can be ready for your schoolwork.
So that kind of goes off one of the basic principles of Catholic theology, that God uses good things in the world to share his life, to build on, right? Grace builds on nature, and so we have to first kind of look at the natural self before he begins to use us as a supernatural bridge to his grace and mediator of his grace. So all of those attentions are given to ourselves. You know, what is going on in our personality, our time management, are we responsible? And so that human formation is certainly an important foundation for priestly ministry. And what about the intellectual side of formation, the dimension, the pillar, whatever you want to talk about? You know, what is the intellectual?
Why'd you pick intellectual?
I think it should be obvious.
Yeah. You beat your brother, you know.
People don't expect us as priests to be mathematicians, thank God, especially for me, because I'm not good at math. People don't expect us to be scientists. People don't expect us to be doctors or lawyers. They expect us to know the faith. They expect us to be able to tell people how to build relationships with God. They expect us to tell them how to get to heaven, because that's what we all desire. And so the intellectual formation is it kind of feels like going to a normal college. We take classes. Even though we're considered to be in grad school in theology, we're taking 16 and a half hours where we're taking systematic theology, scripture, moral theology, pastoral leadership, things like that. And all of these things feel like being in a normal college because we have to pass exams.
Right. I think that's one of the things people don't realize as well, that simply because you go to the seminary, it's not a done deal. There are very stringent evaluations and exams, and it's very possible to fail out very quickly.
Absolutely.
It happens.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Right.
Somehow I've made it, thank God. So,
Passed them.
but even more importantly, people need to know about the message of God, and in order for us to preach effectively to people, in order for us to bring God into a world that's a secular world that's filled with a lot of scientific beliefs, things like that, we have to know how to be able to talk about these things, and all of our classes help us to do that. And so we're all striving to get our masters in divinity, and we all specialize, I guess, in a different. I just know the guys from Mount, Renee and I do moral theology, and he does history, church history. So we focus on different things. So that pillar is very important for us to be able to engage the world.
Okay. So we've talked so far about the human dimension, the intellectual. Christopher, all of these are for the sake of being effective pastors. So what does the seminary do to help the student, help the seminarian become familiar with pastoral settings, to get the skills that they need for all of those things that they're going to encounter in the parish to be an effective minister?
A great question. I don't know about the Mount, but Notre Dame, they like to emphasize that, you know, the pastoral pillar, pastoral dimension, the idea is that it integrates the other three. So you're kind of drawing from your human, drawing from your intellectual, you'll probably get the spiritual, so you're drawing from the spiritual, and you're sort of integrating them into how am I going to be an effective pastor, right? So what they have us do is throughout the years, you work in different settings. So our first year, we work with the poor. For me, I went to Bishop Perry Center, where you go out on the streets and you kind of interact with the poor. You sort of pray with them, see what kind of needs they need. And at the end of it, at the end of the semester, they have you come back and you sort of reflect on your experience. And you sort of like evaluate yourself. You have people evaluate you, and they want you to sort of draw out, like, where are some of my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? How was I effective as a pastor, as a potential pastor? And where can I really sort of, you know, need some work to be more effective? So like we have another year we teach, another year we'll be in a parish setting. And so it's really just sort of how to really sort of put yourself in that mind frame, in the shoes of what it means to be a pastor.
Great. And that leaves the spiritual dimension, the spiritual pillar for formation. If you could speak to that a little bit, Renee.
Sure. All these dimensions ultimately lead to one person, and that is Christ. We as deacons are not here to just simply make people feel good or fix people's problems. We're here to bring them Christ, especially through our lives. And what the spiritual pillar is all about fostering a deep sense of Christ in our lives and in everyone else's lives, and being an example of Christ. And the way the seminary encourages us to foster that relationship is through a daily holy hour. Every seminarian and every seminary in the country, for the most part, encourages their seminarians to do 1 hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament, or if you can't do it in front of the Blessed Sacrament, in a sacred place, where you really take the opportunity to grow in a deep, personal, one-on-one relationship with Christ. And this is a wonderful time. It's a sacred time. It's a time that really lifts up our souls. I know personally, without my holy hour, I'm nothing. I'm totally ineffective as a vessel of Christ. But it's also important to note that it's not enough to simply do a holy hour. Our rector at the Mount has a saying that he loves to drill. He says, "Are you living your holy hour?" It's simply not enough to make 1 hour out of the 24 hours a day sacred. We have to let that 1 hour spill over into that time. And that's what our holy hours are here to do, to help us to make the rest of the day sacred. Another thing that seminary forms us to do to make the day sacred is it forms us to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. That is five prayers that are prayed throughout the day that every priest and deacons are obliged to pray. We pray this for the church, especially, in fact, it's one of the first promises that we make to the bishop, that we're going to pray for the people of God. And that is, those 5 prayers are the officer readings, morning prayer, daytime prayer, evening prayer, and night prayer. And the core readings for all of these prayers are the Psalms. Those are the prayers that God gave us to pray so we can get back to God.
Great. So I think that's been very helpful for us to have a better understanding of what you guys have been up to for the last 6, 7, or 9 years. So I think you've learned a few things.
Yeah,
and here you are as deacons. And let's talk a little bit about the diaconate. What is holy orders? What did you receive very recently? Maybe Chris, you could speak to that. Just a summary of what's at the heart of being a deacon.
Yeah. Well, diaconate. So we have the sacrament of holy orders, and you kind of have a hierarchy. We have the bishop, the priest, and the diaconate. So diaconate's at the bottom, and that's what we were just ordained in. And through the sacrament of the diaconate, the holy orders, you are configured to Christ the servant, so Christ the deacon. And so we're called to proclaim the gospel. This means preaching at Mass, actually proclaiming the gospel. We're called to assist at Mass, so I like at the altar, help the priest, and we're also kind of called to do acts of charity. This can sort of happen in various degrees, depending on what your pastor wants you to do. I know for me, I've already been told that I'll be teaching some classes. So that's sort of like me working my acts of charity, so to speak. But really it's just kind of being with the people, to getting down sort of in the trenches, always like to say, and finally getting your hands dirty, and really just kind of being there with them on their level. Yeah.
Great. And Matt, Chris mentioned that the sacrament of holy orders enables one to perform these acts, particular to the diaconate. What happens during the rite of the reception of holy orders, the diaconate ordination rite, that are signs of being sent forth and to begin to exercise this ministry? So if someone has never been to an ordination, or if someone attended your ordination, what are those kind of key elements of that ritual?
First and foremost, I think what people recognize when they come to ordinations is some very unique things that we do within the ordination rite. And one of the things is that they see us lay down on the floor flat, what we call prostrate. And that is to show that we're first and foremost unworthy of this call, but we're lifted up by the church, by the bishop. And so what they'll see is they'll also see the laying on of hands of the bishop upon us. And when that happens, the Holy Spirit descends upon us, and we're changed forever in what we call the indelible mark. And so what this is this is like a changing of the soul, where we'll be separated forever. No longer a lay person, but a member of the clergy, called to be one with the bishop and with the priest in this mission for salvation for humanity. So they'll see these different things going on, and those are the two that just came to my mind. But is there anything else that you want me to elaborate on in particular?
Well, I know one of the things that happens is immediately after receiving holy orders, as a sign of that, you then receive the vestments proper to being a deacon. And it's tradition that we choose someone who's been close to us, maybe a deacon or a priest, for that. So maybe each of you can mention who you chose to be your vesting, or to vest you as a deacon.
I'm going to choose my father, because my father is a deacon, and so that's obviously very special to me. And he's taught me how to be a servant in this life. He's taught me how to work, and so for me, obviously, following my father's footsteps, in a certain sense, it's a great honor for me to receive the stole from him, to place that around me. So,
and yourself, David?
Deacon T.J. Richard from Mount Carmel in Chautauqua.
Okay.
It just had that. I remember just going there and seeing him preach the word, but also give the homily, and that just stuck with me for some reason.
Yeah. Hey, Renee?
I have Deacon Pat Quagliana. He's a deacon from Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a brokerage.
Not at all. He's definitely Italian, and he sounds it too. It's great. He directed me whenever I did a 30-day silent retreat several years ago.
I didn't realize you did a 30-day.
Well, yeah, it was really. I had to ask for permission. It was a really wonderful experience over in Omaha, and I'll have to tell you about it sometime.
And Christopher, your vesting.
My vesting, well, I didn't want to be like these guys, so I didn't get a deacon for mine. I got a priest. I got Father Cedric Saunier. So he was a priest throughout the years I got to know really well and got close to, built a really good relationship with, so I kind of wanted to ask him to do it.
So we have kind of a unique situation for these four men who, for their ordination, your dad will be the deacon of the gospel, and then we have seminarian brothers who will be serving as lectors. So. Pauvre David.
Personal key man.
Passo. So we know that we are in the midst of the year of mercy. So David, do you have any thoughts on that? That God's providence would provide that you would be ordained to the diaconate, in the year of mercy, tying maybe those ways that you exercise the diaconate to mercy. Have you given much thought to that as you approach ordination?
That is something I've given a lot of thought to, especially since the great amount of mercy that I've already received. Just through personal life experiences, having to first finally receive God's love and His mercy, which allowed me to extend that to others in my family and my friends. And as a deacon, is extremely special to be able to finally live that out in a higher level with the grace of orders and bring that out to others and help others as part of the universal priesthood to live that out in their daily lives. That's going to be extremely special and poignant for me.
Great. So I think we have a number of young men watching this morning who perhaps are feeling the call to pursue seminary, to test the call to priesthood. So maybe each of you could offer just a little word of encouragement, a little word of advice. What should someone do right now who is thinking about that possibility of going to seminary and discerning the priesthood?
Every vocation story I've ever heard always includes prayer. It's always a huge part of every vocation story that I've ever heard personally. And I think it's absolutely critical for any young man thinking about becoming a priest is to take that time and really pray. Because it's in prayer that we're going to hear the voice of God. He doesn't come in anything majestic or anything loud and strong and powerful. At least in these times, it's kind of like the story of Elijah, the call of Elijah. Whenever he was running from an evil king, he heard he was running from an evil king. He went into a cave, and all of a sudden he heard fire outside, just a giant blaze. He heard thunder. He heard rain. None of those things were God. Then all of a sudden he heard something special. He heard a tiny little whisper, and that's whenever he knew that was God calling his name. And that's how most vocations.
Yeah, so just that encouragement to pursue a recurring prayer life.
Sure. Absolutely.
And on a more practical note, I think very important, it's very essential. But, if you're discerning or you think you have a call, reach out to your parish priest especially. I guarantee you he will have a lot of great advice for you and sort of help you and direct you towards where you need to go for better discernment. Also, reach out to our vocation director. Who's that again, Father?
Check the website.
Yeah, your vocations office. But give him a call. He's pretty good.
Yeah. Are there any events, Matthew, that you would recommend, things that you attended or that you know of other guys who attended that were helpful in discerning priesthood?
Yeah, there's every summer we do Quo Vadis days, and that's a 3-day retreat where all the seminarians are present, and we actually run the retreat here with you, Father B. And it's a good opportunity for them to experience the fraternity that we have with one another, how important brotherhood is, and how to grow in their spiritual lives throughout those 3 days, while also being spoken to by various priests of the diocese. And if there's one thing that I would tell any young man, it would be, don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. It's a win-win situation no matter what. Give God the opportunity to work on you. Just say yes and give it a shot.
Well, I think it's great advice, and actually we're running out of time, so we'll have to go without David's advice en français. But
it's all right.
So I do thank you all for being here. Thank you for your vocation, and look forward to seeing the good things that you are going to do as ordained ministers of God's Holy Church. And we thank you for joining us, and we commend you to the Lord for your great prayers and sacrifices that you continue to offer for all of our clergy seeking to do God's work in His holy church. God bless you.